The Maze Runner by James Dashner. First chapter Friday read aloud video with The Word Nerd. Today, as you listen, play along. Watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down, word by word, and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher. Hey teachers, check the link in the description box for some student engagement worksheets. I've got both generic and novel specific ones, and I think they'll help your students zone in instead of zoning out when you turn on the screen.
Hi, my name is Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I've been getting a lot of requests for dystopian novels, so it makes it the perfect time for me to share The Maze Runner by James Dashner with you. Now, this book has been a New York Times bestseller. It's the first in a series of many adventurous and action-packed stories. It's been made into a movie, so there are a ton of different reasons why I think you're really going to love this story. I'm going to read you the back so you know a little bit about what it's about, and then I'm going to read you the very fast first chapter. Everything is going to change. When Thomas wakes up in the lift, the only thing he can remember is his first name. He has no recollection of his parents, his home, or how he got to where he is. His memory is empty. But he's not alone. When the lift's doors open, Thomas finds himself surrounded by kids who welcome him to the glade, a large expanse enclosed by stone walls. Just like Thomas, the Gladers don't know why or how they got to the glade. All they know is that every morning, for as long as anyone can remember, the stone doors to the maze that surrounds them have opened. Every night, for just as long, they've closed tight. Every 30 days, a new boy is delivered in the lift, and no one wants to be stuck in the maze after dark. The Gladers were expecting Thomas's arrival, but the next day, a girl is sent up, the first girl ever to arrive in the glade. And more surprising yet is the message she delivers. The Gladers have always been convinced that if they can solve the maze that surrounds the glade, they might find their way home, wherever that may be. But it's looking more and more like it's looking more and more as if the maze is unsolvable. And something about the girl's arrival is starting to make Thomas feel different. Something is telling him that he just might have some answers if only he can find a way to retrieve the dark secrets locked within his own mind. All right, it's too good to waste any time babbling about anything else, so we're just going to dive right in. Chapter 1, The Maze Runner by James Dashner. He began his new life standing up, surrounded by cold darkness and stale, dusty air. Metal ground against metal, a lurching shudder that shook the floor beneath him. He fell down at the sudden movement and shuffled backward on his hands and feet, drops of sweat beating on his forehead despite the cool air. His back struck a hard metal wall. He slid along it until he hit the corner of the room, slinking to the floor. He pulled his legs up, tight against his body, hoping his eyes would soon adjust to the darkness. With another jolt, the room jerked upward, like an old lift in a mine shaft. Harsh sounds of chains and pulleys, like the workings of an ancient steel factory, echoed through the room, bouncing off the walls with a hollow, tinny whine. The lightless elevator swayed back and forth as it ascended, turning the boy's stomach sour with nausea. A smell like burnt oil invaded his senses, making him feel even worse. He wanted to cry, but no tears came. He could only sit there, alone, waiting. My name is Thomas, he thought. That that was the only thing he could remember about his life. He didn't understand how this could be possible. His mind functioned without flaw, trying to calculate his surroundings, his predicament. Knowledge flooded through his thoughts, facts and images, memories and details of the world and how it works. He pictured snow on trees, running down a leaf-strewn road, eating a hamburger, the moon casting a pale glow on a grassy meadow, swimming in a lake, a busy city square with hundreds of people bustling about their business. And yet, he didn't know where he came from, or how he'd gotten inside the dark lift, or who his parents were. He didn't even know his last name. Images of people flashed across his mind, but there was no recognition, their faces replaced with haunted smears of color. He couldn't think of one person he knew, or recall a single conversation. The room continued its ascent, swaying. Thomas grew immune to the ceaseless rattling of the chains that pulled him upward. A long time passed. Minutes stretched into hours, although it was impossible to know for sure because every second seemed an eternity. No, he was smarter than that. Trusting his instincts, he knew he'd been moving for roughly half an hour. Strangely enough, He felt his fear whisked away like a swarm of gnats caught in the wind, replaced by an intense curiosity. He wanted to know where he was and what was happening. With a groan and then a clonk, the rising room halted. The sudden change jolted Thomas from his huddled position and threw him across the hard floor. As he scrambled to his feet, he felt the room sway less and less until finally it stilled. Everything fell silent. A minute passed. 2. He looked in every direction but saw only darkness. He felt along the walls again, searching for a way out, but there was nothing, only the cool metal. He groaned in frustration, his echo amplified through the air like a haunted moan of death. It faded, and silence returned. He screamed, he called for help, he pounded on the walls with his fists, but nothing. Thomas backed into the corner once again, folded his arms, and shivered, and the fear returned. He felt a worrying shudder in his chest as if his heart wanted to escape, to flee his body. "Someone! Help! Me!" he screamed. Each word ripped his throat raw. A loud clank rang out above him, and he sucked in a startled breath as he looked up. A straight line of light appeared across the ceiling of the room, and Thomas watched as it expanded. A heavy grating sound revealed double sliding doors being forced open. After so long in the darkness, the light stabbed his eyes. He looked away, covering his face with both hands. He heard noises above, voices, and fear squeezed his chest. "Look at that shank. How old is he? Looks like a clunk in a t-shirt. You're a clunk, shuckface. Dude, it smells like feet down there. Hope you enjoyed the one-way trip, Greenie. Ain't no take it back, bro." Thomas was hit with a wave of confusion, blistered with panic. The voices were odd, tinged with echo. Some of the words were completely foreign, others felt familiar. He willed his eyes to adjust as he squinted toward the light and those speaking. At first he could only see shifting shadows, but they soon turned into the shapes of bodies, people bending over the hole in the ceiling, looking down at him and pointing. And then, as if the lens of the camera had sharpened its focus, the faces cleared. They were boys. All of them. Some younger, some older. Thomas didn't know what he expected, but seeing those faces puzzled him. They were just teenagers. Kids. Some of his fear melted away, but not enough to calm his racing heart. Someone lowered a rope from above, the end of it tied into a big loop. Thomas hesitated, then stepped into it with his right foot and clutched the rope as he was yanked toward the sky. Hands reached down, lots of hands, grabbing him by his clothes, pulling him up. The world seemed to spin, a swirling mist of faces and color and light. A storm of emotions wrenched his gut, twisted and pulled. He wanted to scream, cry, wanted to throw up. The chorus of voices had grown silent, but someone spoke as they yanked him over the sharp edge of the box, and Thomas knew he'd never forget the words. "Nice to meet you, Shank," the boy said. "Welcome to the Glade." You want to find out what happens in the Glade and to Thomas and to the girl who shows up the very next day, you're definitely going to want to pick up a copy of The Maze Runner by James Dashner. I'll make sure that there are links for that down in the description box, and I hope you will join me again here for another First Chapter Friday video. Oh, before I go, I'm also going to put a playlist for other dystopian novels in the video description box as well. So if you like this kind of genre, the story that takes place in the future where everything is messed up, I've got a lot more of those great books down there for you. All right, see you again next time, guys. Happy reading.
To continue reading The Maze Runner by James Dashner or find any of the rest of the books in this series, check the video description box for links or get them from your school and classroom library. Then be sure to check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday playlist. I have over 150 titles there waiting for you. I have all sorts of genres and formats, and it's just such a great place for you to start when you're looking for your next great read. Speaking of your next great read, if you want it to be a dystopian novel like this one, meaning it takes place in a future that's kind of messed up, I've got lots of other great ones on my channel. I'll be sure to put a link for that specific playlist in the video description box. This week's mystery quote says, "If you ain't scared, you ain't human." Thanks so much for visiting my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope you come back again for more great First Chapter Friday videos, brain breaks, teaching tips, and more. I'll see you again next time. Happy reading.